How did LeBron escape going bald? Did Paul Pierce actually make it to the bathroom? What was Vlade Divac thinking drafting Marvin Bagley second overall? These are all unsolved mysteries in the NBA, but we're keeping things a little classier, and instead we're going to pay a little more attention to the more serious mysteries in the history of the league. And these are all mysteries we're going to really dive into today and find out why the circumstances around them are still unsolved to this day. And I want to start with one of the more relevant in today's game, and that's why won't Ben Simmons shoot threes? And there's actually a lot to this one. Now, if you've seen any of Ben Simmons' open runs in the offseason or even pre-game shoot-arounds, he shoots threes all the time and actually makes a lot of them. He's really not a terrible shooter, but if he can make them, why doesn't he take them in game? Well, Draymond Green's in a similar situation. He blows wide open looks all the time, but his excuse is why would he shoot a three if he has an opportunity to get Steph Curry an open shot instead? It's a stupid excuse, but it makes sense if Ben came out and said something like that. But he hasn't. He hasn't really spoken about it too much at all, which is why we're still left to wonder. Well, let's take things back. Ben Simmons' favorite player growing up was LeBron James, and it makes sense. They were about the same size, and it's clear he modeled a lot of his game after him, including his shooting form, because LeBron James in most of his life is left-handed, but on the court and when shooting the ball, he does everything right-handed. And Ben Simmons is right-handed, but he shoots threes left-handed. And he's done this since high school, but speaking of that, let's look back. So as a senior, he attempted 51 threes all season long and made 15 of them, putting him at 29%. Then he goes to LSU, where in 31 games, he took 3 three-point attempts. So we can narrow it down to the fact that sometime between high school and college, something happened to him. But what was it? Well, at some point, he developed a mental block to being able to shoot or want to shoot the ball. The real mystery here is, how is that even possible? Did him shooting so bad in high school completely destroy all of his confidence? Well, possibly, because he's not just scared to shoot three-pointers. I think it's mostly that, but it's just shooting and scoring in general now too, like we saw in the playoffs. This problem's only getting worse. Last year, Philly even hired a sports psychologist to try and talk him out of it, but clearly that didn't do anything. And everyone around him, from his brother to his high school coach to Brett Brown to Joel Embiid, all pretty much say that he's just trying to be as efficient as possible and doesn't believe in his own ability enough to shoot them. It just sounds like he developed some sort of major confidence issue. And so you're telling me Philly has had 2 first overall picks who, for one way or another, both freakishly lost the ability to shoot. Now, switching things up, another major NBA mystery is that we still don't know who LeBron James' father is. Now, we don't need to know, it doesn't really matter, but just the fact that it's pretty unanimously unknown leads us to a lot of questions. Does LeBron's dad know he's the father of a billionaire and one of the greatest NBA players ever? Does LeBron know who his dad is? Was his father also bald by 30? Was his dad 6'8" and that's where he got his freakish genetics? Or is James just a random freak of nature? These are all questions that might have been able to be answered if we had a name or a face we could associate with him. Well, the only thing we really know for a fact is that he doesn't know who his dad is, because he said so in an interview with Rachel Nichols. He has no idea who he is, but the internet thinks they found the answer. And the theories really revolve around 2 men. The first is a guy named Bryce Stovell. Years ago, he tried coming out and saying that back in 1984, he met a woman named Gloria at a bar. He was 29 and she was 15. But she lied to him and told him she was 20. He said they hit it off that night, and in December, LeBron James was born. This is Bryce Stovell next to LeBron. Do you see how much they resemble? No? Yeah, me either. Because he wasn't his father. He took a DNA test and it came back with a 0% chance of that. And then tried to sue James and his mom for tampering with the DNA test, which was a flop. But the second man, his story's a lot more convincing, and to this day, his name still gets thrown around and is the most likely guy to pop up if you try to Google who LeBron's dad is. It's a bit confusing though, because there's 2 names that pop up: Anthony McClelland and Roland Bivens. Now, most theories unanimously agree that McClelland is James' real father, but Roland has a compelling story too. So apparently he was a star basketball player at the same high school Gloria went to in the 80s, and he was 18 or 19 when Gloria was 15 or 16. Students that went to that school and even some of Gloria's old friends said the two knew each other and dated at one point. The coach for the school's basketball team at the time even has said Roland played a similar style to LeBron, but this is where things get weird. After that, apparently Bivens was in and out of jail but passed away in 1994, which would have made LeBron only 8 years old. But the thing is, going back to that Rachel Nichols interview, he makes it seem like he knows that his father's still alive. And coincidentally enough, rumors out there say that Roland Bivens didn't pass but instead changed his name to Anthony McClelland in 1994. The reasons why are still up for debate, and it would make sense because apparently McClelland was arrested again back in 2002. And even Ron Artest came out at one point and said his brother spent 10 years in jail with LeBron's dad. that. And whether you Google search it, look on Wikipedia, or really anywhere on the internet, Anthony McClelland comes up as LeBron's father. But things get weird again. Here's the picture that comes up for Roland Bivens. They have similar mouths, similar noses, and pretty similar eyes. Then this picture comes up for Anthony McClelland, and it's mind-blowing how much this actually looks like LeBron James. But this looks like a high school photo, and these two guys don't look like the same person at all. So I don't think that Roland and Anthony are the same person, but for McClelland, this picture also pops up, and it looks like many years later, and these two do look like the same person. And the older picture still holds some similarities with LeBron James, not even to mention this dude looks about 6'8" in high school. So I really don't know what to believe in this point. Is his father Anthony, Roland, are they both the same person? I don't know, and it's what makes this one of the league's biggest mysteries. And that brings us to our next, which is personally one of mine as well, and that's, how is Isaiah Thomas not on an NBA roster? How is Tyler Johnson still in the NBA, but Isaiah isn't? How can Quinn Cook get on a team, but IT can't? How did the Magic not pick up Isaiah Thomas, but sign Sindarius Thornwell? Who's Sindarius Thornwell? I don't know, but he averaged 3 points a game last year. Isaiah played 3 games for New Orleans last season and averaged at least 7 points. It's been years, but apparently now he's fully healthy and hasn't been given an opportunity since proving that. And we know what he's capable of. We know what his ceiling is as an MVP candidate, team leader, and a guy that led his team through a major playoffs run. And at his worst, he's a solid backup. All that, and he's still only 32 years old and willing to sign with any team for the league minimum. It really just doesn't make any sense how he hasn't made it as even the 14th or 15th man out of 30 different teams in the NBA. He could literally help any team, but no one will sign him. He's had numerous different workouts for a bunch of teams, and like we know he can still play. He dropped 81 a couple months ago at a Pro-Am game and cried because his game finally came back to him. It just doesn't add up, so I'm not sure here. I don't know if the mystery is why aren't teams signing Isaiah Thomas, or what's still wrong with him that NBA teams are seeing during these workouts that are making them not want to sign him. Yet another mystery in the NBA world dates back before Isaiah Thomas's years of success, and we're looking at the 2014 NBA playoffs. And this one's not actually an unsolved mystery, it actually has an answer, but I see the topic come up every so often. I think it's worth talking about Roy Hibbert's disappearance. Now we all remember him from the Pacers' near super team that almost stole an NBA title a couple of years if it weren't for the Miami Heat. They had the wild card Lance Stevenson, the up-and-coming superstar in Paul George, and the defensive monster in Hibbert. And these guys had played together for years, but things really took off in the 2011 and 12 season, where Roy Hibbert became a first-time All-Star, and Indiana took the Heat to 6 games in the second round. Starting in the 2012 season, Roy Hibbert started utilizing the verticality rule, which says the player can contest a shot as long as they only jump straight up. So the Pacers dominated defensively that year. He was 7'2", and that style helped him be top 5 in blocks and defensive win shares in 2013 and in 2014. But then the 2014 playoffs happened, and he fell apart. He now averaged 9, 5, and 1 block a game in what was a huge shift from the previous year. He scored 0 points 2 games in a row in the first round against the Hawks, did the same once against the Wizards, and another time again against the Heat, making it 4 times that postseason. So he immediately got traded that offseason to the Lakers and averaged 5 points a game. Went to the Hornets and did the same, then got to the Nuggets before just announcing his retirement at 31 years old in his prime. And people always ask, what happened to his game? How could a 27-year-old all-star just fall off right when the playoffs started? Well, the game shifted, and it did it quick. Smaller and faster big men learned how to use the verticality rule, while at the same time a team like the Hawks figured if they just ran 5 perimeter players, they could cancel out Hibbert. He was too slow to play on the perimeter, and it drew him out from within the paint, where he'd usually stand all game. And it had been hinted at for years, but this was really the start of small ball basketball. It was just really strange timing, given the fact that he dominated the league that entire year and didn't get exposed until right when the playoffs started. Our next mystery though belongs to the Cleveland Cavaliers, and a big question a lot of people still have to this day is how did the Cavs win 3 first overall picks in 4 years, and 4 in 12 years? Well, things are either rigged or it was a monster amount of luck, because the chances of them winning all 4 of those picks in 12 years is a 1 in 10,000 or a 0.012% chance. Those are pretty high odds, and it makes you scratch your head and wonder if for maybe a second that something was up. So the first overall pick they had, we'll give it to them. It makes sense. They openly tanked as hard as they could, finished with the league worst 17-65 record, and had a 22.5% chance to land that first pick, aka LeBron James, the year that they did. That one makes sense, it's fine, but then LeBron leaves the team 7 years later, and while he's gone for 4 years, they went 3 of the 4 first overall picks. So some people say it was rigged for them so they could stack assets and as many great players, so eventually it could lead to him coming back, which is exactly what happened. They drafted Kyrie Irving, Anthony Bennett, and Andrew Wiggins the year he returned, giving them enough assets to contend and eventually win a championship. I mean, it does look suspicious because they didn't completely tank while he was away. In 2012, they had the second worst overall record and a 19% chance of the first pick, the third worst in 2013 and a 15% chance, and the 10th worst record in 2014 and only a 1.7% chance. But they managed to get all three in what was an overall 0.04% chance of happening. And honestly, I think this one was just the Cavs getting extremely lucky, but I definitely can see why the conspiracies come in, especially when it involves the best player in the NBA at the time who had the best potential story of him returning and bringing a title to Cleveland. Part 2 is coming soon, don't forget to subscribe.